For anyone who's interested in listening, there was a discussion this afternoon in the Council Committee of the Whole, administration, myself, and Chief Flo Simon, and Public Works Director Eric Johnston gave an overview of the January 28th disbandment of the encampment at City Hall. And I'd just like to express thanks for those who worked on site on that day, for their professional and caring service in spite of very difficult and volatile circumstances. I think it's careful that we make distinctions when we talk about those people that were protesting in ways that were dangerous and offensive and involved criminal behavior, with those who engage in peaceable protest. And of course, we honor that and we show remarkable restraint for that. That is our duty. We respect that. But there were those on that day who didn't exhibit those qualities. And so I want to be very clear that those are the people with whom we direct our expressions of dismay and irritation. Many of you may have seen a video that circulated on Bellingham Police social media showing excerpts from a body-worn camera footage that shows remarkable restraint and patience demonstrated by our police department on that day. And I want to thank all of our personnel for demonstrating that restraint and patience. And they were out there for hours and hours, engaged. And we thank them. Special thanks to those men and women who used their training and experience to remain steadfast and calm under what it's fair to say were daunting circumstances, and in doing so prevented further injury and harm. I'd also like to acknowledge many others who are involved in the encampment. This includes many people within the administration, the legal department, the mayor's office, parks, planning and community development, and the whole department team and others. We've put considerable energy into this effort in recent months, as well as significant care and compassion for those experiencing homelessness. And I want to thank you all. We've been steadfastly working to do the difficult work of building increased capacity with a variety of our partners, and that work is going to continue. I'm not going to repeat my remarks about this afternoon. For those that are interested in watching, certainly refer you to the video of today's Committee of the Whole meeting. It was a good discussion with council members after our presentation. It's going to be posted at meetings.cob.org Tuesday morning, and replays on BTV at noon on February 9th, 13th, 16th, and 20th. So with that, I will conclude my remarks this evening and hand it back to Council President Stone.
Thank you, Mayor Fleetwood. So moving forward this evening, next item on the agenda is public comment. So a couple of housekeeping items. One is to say that as of 7 p.m., we were at 48 people in the sign up, just to put council on notice of where we were as of 7. So as the public may recall, when we were back in the good old days, when we were in chambers, the sign up sheet that the clerk would take, was picked up at 7. And so due to the high numbers, we're gonna start with that number and then go from there. And whether we will be able to hear all comments at the beginning or move them to the end will depend on the just time. So Public comment, there's some discretion, obviously, that comes into play with respect to public comment. I wanted to ask supporters and IT to put up the guidelines for public comment, and just to highlight a few of those before we get started this evening. As everybody knows, each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. You're not able to donate your time to another speaker who's in the queue. Speakers are not permitted to comment on topics that are addressed in a separate public hearing at the same meeting, which is irrelevant this evening. But all remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. So these are our city council meetings, and during the public comment period, it's expected that those remarks would address us as the city council. Obviously, members of the public know that there are other methods to provide public comment. So the live public comment available this evening and during council meetings is one option, but obviously we also receive public comment in person, sometimes at the grocery store or walking down the street, or emails, voicemails. You know, I'd mentioned earlier today, over the last week, I received over 1,000 emails just with respect to the encampments and homelessness in our community, in addition to hundreds of voicemails and continuing to clean out that box. So I only point that out to remind the public that there are many ways to contact us, and that this is not the only option, but a reminder that you're speaking to the council as a whole. And so this is not a speech to, you know, the public at large or to other entities, but to us specifically and the work that we do. So for speakers to refrain from comment or behavior that involves disorderly speech or action, name calling, personal attacks, obscene or indecent remarks, other derogatory comments or personalities. And there's no advertising or promotion permitted, promoting a contest or lottery. Some of these are not as applicable. Promoting candidates for public office, which soon we'll get into the that time of year where there will be campaigning going on. So no promoting of individual candidates or political issues. And so wanting to make sure that, I know that the last council meeting 2 weeks ago was, you know, charged with lots of emotion. And a number of people have reached out to express concern about how that meeting went forward. And what I want to say is that the parameters put in place to say that we will not, you know, be tolerating, you know, name calling or personal attacks or obscene language. That's obviously at the discretion here, having, you know, the mute button, but basically wanting to make that very clear in the beginning that it's not going to be tolerated, because we want a civil discourse and want to be able to hear what you're saying. And so public comment is very important to me, and wanting to hear what members of the public have to say. And if you're muted, we can't hear what you have to say. And trying to hear through personal attacks or foul language is also difficult. So we may have to agree to disagree about the particular guidelines, but those are the guidelines for public comment. The other reminder is that this is a publicly broadcast meeting. And so it runs on public television, and there are certain guidelines there as well. And so that's why it's important that we stay within those guidelines. So this evening, wanting to just remind everybody of those rules and guidelines, and that it will be monitored, and that individuals will be muted if they violate the guidelines. And again, I don't want, you know, to have to mute anybody. And so just asking to be respectful, and we will do the same in return. And so this evening, we can take down the guidelines. I'm requesting that members of the council and the mayor and staff to, I guess, to close videos during public comment. What I will do is that as president of the council, I will remain on screen and listen to, obviously everyone else is still present and listening, but to have that be more of a personal interaction. So myself, the speaker, and then there will be a 3-minute clock as well, and having that clock on the screen so that you're able to see that time as it counts down, because in the past we've had difficulty with providing sort of that reminder at 15 seconds and then calling time and people feeling rushed. So you'll be able to watch that time transpire. So I will share that screen. If there are any other comments or requests from council before we get started with public comment. Councilmember Anderson and then Vargas.
Did you make a decision about stating one's name, which has always been past practice?
Thank you, beat Councilmember Vargas to it. So yes, and yes, I was just confirming with the clerk. So one of the requirements as well, especially when we were back in council chambers, thank you for the reminder, was to always state your name at the beginning of your testimony. And so that's a continuing requirement, is to state your name at the beginning of your testimony. Again, this is a public meeting and it's being recorded for public, records and for the community to be able to refer back to that. So it's important that that be provided at the beginning. So at the beginning of testimony, needing to provide your name. Unfortunately, if you're not able or willing to disclose your name, you will need to find another means to communicate with the council and share your thoughts and concerns. And again, we can be reached by email or voicemail, but for purposes of this meeting and the public comment period, we will need individuals to state their name at the beginning of their testimony. Other questions or comments? No? Okay. So with that, I'm going to try my hand at the clock. I know that the clerk has done that in the past, so it's a group effort on this end. And with that, I will share. Give me one moment. Okay. There it is. Okay, so hopefully if I can get confirmation from the clerk whether or not we are able to see the clock at this time.
Yep, we are ready.
Okay, wonderful. So we can have the first speaker, please.
Kanui Rappaport.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. You can start the timer. My name is Kanui Rappaport, and I'm a community member in Bellingham. And tonight, I am speaking to Mayor Fleetwood and Bellingham City Council members and community members listening. Tonight, I speak to you about Camp 210. I will speak to you about the freezing weather, your city's and policy around sweeps, CDC guidelines on sweeps, lacks of services, and the cost of the last sweep. I will speak to some of these things, but there's so many other issues I could talk to you about around the homeless. And tonight I will share with you a review of our conversations, questions about your lack of support to Camp 210, commitments I asked you to make, an investigation on the legality of your sweeps, and thoughts on the city meetings that occurred today. By now, Council, you've seen my email I sent you today. Camp 210 was not swept. What's next? Located at tinyurl.com/camp210thought for community members as well to see. As well as I've shared my past thoughts with you and the city's response at a previous article published, thoughts on Camp 210 sweep commentary at tinyurl.com/camp210thoughts. And for community as well to see. Some questions I have for the city are: what support has been offered to the camp at the new Camp 210? What is the city's plan on supporting those folks here when snow and 12-degree weather is expected this week? Instead of trying to threaten campers and build tension, why isn't the city more clear in working to find solutions? On the legality of camp cleanups, no doubt campers have issues with our police, which is why this police department acknowledged no one called to ask for things back. Every time I've seen police visit the camp, they've not been wearing their mask or wear their mask beneath their nose. The camp coordinator and their voicemail, which has just seemed to be changed, that sweeps and cleanups are not happening during COVID. Additionally, on the City of Bellingham website, for which I've shortened as tinyurl.com/sweepsdelay, it says that the camp cleanups have suspended for the time being. I'm expecting bold solutions and legislation tonight and productive responses instead of our city's violent sweep of the past site of Camp 210 sweeps in general. I urge you to change 88.04.080 overnight camping as a violation of overnight camping prohibiting on park property except for written permission. A violation of the section is civil infraction. On tonight's city council meetings, how much did that sweep of Camp 210 cost? So far, Bellingham Herald reports it as with the addition to State Patrol, $125,000, and that does not include the Border Patrol and sheriffs that were involved. You claimed that there was an armory within those pallets that were at Camp 210. It was just a pallet home. You claimed it was legal, but then you won't have that at public session. Additionally, you have seen the full drone footage of snipers on those buildings.
Time, Kai. Thank you, Kai Nui. Next speaker, please.
Nat Latos.
Hi, I'm here.
Go ahead, Nat.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nat Lattis. I'm a registered nurse working and living here in Bellingham. And to echo some of what Kainui was just speaking on, I would really like to see City Council take some bold action on this. I recognize that, as was discussed earlier in the day at various meetings, there's this gap period where we're waiting for construction to get done and waiting for other things to get done. And I certainly understand that. I have worked in construction. Things take time, and that does nothing to help the people who are, risking exposure tonight. Further, and to that point, there needs to be some sort of commitment to finding an ongoing stable place until we reach whatever that end point is, because what's going to happen, as you can all have already deduced, is the camp's just going to keep moving. So rather than saying like, okay, we're going to spend another $200,000 and sweep another camp, potentially cause another spreader event, let's come up with something that we can at least humanely recognize these problems. Another point that I want to speak to from earlier in the day was there was some reference about how people were going to Camp 210 and thus weren't receiving services that they had been receiving at base camp. And I feel like that was a poorly conceived argument. And the reason is, if somebody has the choice to go somewhere else and they choose to, and then at that place that they're choosing to be at, they choose to not talk to somebody, it's not necessarily a healthy decision, but this is something I deal with all the time as a nurse. I have plenty of diabetic patients who continue to eat poorly. I don't get to tell them, no, you're not allowed to do that. So that people are choosing not to go to base camp, I think, is a more important question to ask why that might be than saying, oh, people who choose to go to camp are obviously making a bad decision for themselves. And lastly, in finding an ongoing solution, of course, trying to work with care providers throughout the community is great. And also recognizing that many of these people have worked with all of the care providers in this community and found the responses lacking in compassion and recognition of who they are as human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Next speaker, please.
Matui Tamburini.
Hi, my name is Matteo Tamburini. I'm a Bellingham resident. I live on 20th Street. I've lived here for 14 years now. Taxpayer. I'm also here as a board member of the Whatcom Peace and Justice Center. And I'm here to read a letter that the Whatcom Peace and Justice Center has written and co-signed with a variety of other organizations. As a group of local grassroots community organizations concerned with justice and human rights, we come together to publicly condemn the openly militarized use of force displayed in sweeping the encampment at 210 Lottie Street on Thursday, January 28th. We call on the mayor to reverse the course of escalating violence and intimidation and immediately cancel the sweep of the encampment at Jerry Fields. We demand that the city abide by city CDC guidelines for minimizing the spread of COVID-19 among people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, which state, if individual housing options are not available, allow people who are living unsheltered or in encampments to remain where they are. The guidelines further note that, quote, clearing encampments can cause people to disperse throughout the community and break connections with service providers. This increases the potential for infectious disease spread, unquote. Instead of compounding the harm that has already been done to the residents of the encampment by subjecting them to further violations of their basic human rights, we call on the city to offer them options for temporary shelter, either at their current location or another location to be mutually agreed upon, with the provision of electricity, water, and sanitation facilities adequate to serve residents' basic needs. In summary, we request that Mayor Seth Fleetwood and the City of Bellingham commit to 1, halt all camp cleanups and develop a permanent policy banning sweeps, and 2, offer all Camp 210 residents adequate public services and options for temporary and permanent housing that accommodates for the need of disabled people and those who are struggling with mental health issues and drug addiction. Among the signing organizations are the Whatcom Peace and Justice Center, which I am here representing, the Whatcom Human Rights Task Force, Community to Community Development, Imagine No Cages, the Birchwood Food Desert Fighters, the Bellingham Unity Committee, the Riveters Collective, Whatcom Democratic Socialists of America, the Students United for Palestinian Equal Rights from Western Washington University, Stand, Speak, Listen, Bellingham Girls Rock Camp, the Bellingham Deaf and Disability Justice Collective, the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, Social and Environmental Justice Committee, Justin Goebel, Indivisible Bellingham, Bellingham Tenants Union, and 350 Bellingham. And I apologize, but when I received this letter to read it, there's 2 icons who I don't recognize the names of the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mateo. Next speaker, please.
Eddie Yuri.
Good evening, council members and everyone. My name is Eddie Yuri. I'm a resident of downtown Bellingham. Live just about 2 blocks from City Hall, so I've been, on the ground this whole time as this played out. I can say as a neighbor to Camp 210 and Base Camp, wherein much of downtown area since last March has been largely vacant. These are my neighbors, and I can tell you that since 210 was started, generally things were improved in that by having a congregation of people experiencing homelessness in one place. Yes, it may be shocking to see it all at once, but it was already there. It was spread around downtown and the surrounding park areas. In 210, it was better managed and better under control. And I understand it was not what we would call safe. It was not an ideal situation, not something people should stay in, but that's the fact. And as a neighbor, I would have preferred it to continue and not be certainly not be removed in the way it was taken. And so while acknowledging all of the significant and commendable efforts done by the City of Bellingham and other agencies, a dozen nonprofits in our community serving this population every day, hundreds of people being taken care of, there are many who continue to be left out in the cold. And without getting into the complex reasons of that, that's the fact of how it is. And people are going to be camping outside one way or the other. Making it illegal to do so does not help them. The best solution here is to provide a legal framework that allows what's already going to happen, that's out of your control, to continue in a safer way where services can be provided, people can be helped into better circumstances, and those that choose to and want to stay there should be allowed to. Those who want to serve them and volunteer and work with them should be allowed to, in my opinion. But it's not just that. There's really no other option for you here, because even the city has acknowledged that it is illegal to do encampment cleanup operations during the pandemic. That's been acknowledged. The law that you were enforcing to clear the lawn was a civil infraction. That was all. The police use of force was for a civil infraction, not actually a crime. Now we're in a situation where we're headed to lower than 28 degrees tonight, lower than 20 degrees tomorrow or the day after. And there are people left out in the cold now without their winter camping gear and sleeping bags that were taken and held by the city. Not a single item taken from the lawn of City Hall has been returned to people who have been requesting and demanding for the last 10 days to have their personal belongings and survival gear returned to them. This has put a burden on the community, on volunteers and everyone. It's a risk and hazard to us all, not just the most impacted, but to everyone. And right now there is an ordinance on the table that has been prepared and is being considered by you. And I hope that you will thoroughly consider this option for an interim ordinance to enact temporarily to get us through the rest of this week and this winter into a safer situation so we can continue to work on this issue more productively together.
Next speaker, please. Thank you, Eddie.
Alicia Torres.
Into a safer situation so we can continue to work on this issue more productively together.
Next speaker, please. Thank you, Eddie.
Alicia Torres.
Hi, give me 1 second here. Sorry. Right. So I just oh, what? Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I would just like to say I have some rebuttals to some of the points that were made. And I just like to start out with saying the sweeps, aka cleanups, are supposed to be suspended for the duration of COVID-19.
Alicia, I apologize. Will you wait 1 moment?
It says that. And it says if COVID was actually concerned, the officers involved could have done a much better job wearing their mask properly, for one. Also, there were snipers on the roof and in the second story of City Hall windows, and multiple people have pictures of this. Just because they weren't actively taking aim doesn't mean that they weren't there and ready to do so. Also, there was no armory made of pallets. There was a shed where we stored tools to use for building, but there was no actual armory. Also, in regards to the line being held, it was held against police to allow campers time to disperse and to allow other volunteers to be able to help them collect and transport their belongings. It was a defensive measure, and actually people were injured by the police. Protesters were also campers. At least 2 campers were arrested for protesting. There's no division between the two. We're a community supporting each other. In regards to sanitary conditions, those would be possible with basic power, access to porta potties, and trash service. At the new location, volunteers have actually paid for these out of their own pockets and community donations after the city refused to do so. And the private companies hired were told that they were not allowed to provide services at Jerry Field. We actually have communicated with social workers. I personally assisted the Opportunity Council with their point in time count at Jerry Field. There's multiple volunteers that have been in contact with social workers and trying to make sure people are keeping their appointments, getting medications, and staying on track with rehab programs. Volunteers have been working with city council members to pass this legislation, like Eddie just mentioned. Yeah, like the legislation currently under discussion was actually written by camp volunteers. You can't keep moving people around the city and telling them to go to base camp. It isn't and should not be the only option. Like, people are going to freeze this week if we don't come up with some other solution except for just kicking people violently out of their homes. Like, that's the real, like, public health concern. You know, you can't just shut off like services and just keep moving people around. It's disgusting. Anyway, that's it. That's my whole comment. I have 30 seconds left, but that's all.
Thank you, Alicia. Next speaker, please.
Mackenzie Graham.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Hello, council members. My name is Mackenzie Graham, and I'm here as a concerned citizen and community member. Housing is health and a basic human right, and a safe, stable shelter is more important than ever during the coldest months of the COVID-19 pandemic. I join the community's call to action, demanding the mayor and City of Bellingham use their powers to provide emergency shelter, permanent housing for all, and starting with an absolute end to encampment sweeps. The city's response to Camp 210 has left me feeling disturbed and incredibly disappointed in our leadership. The mayor told the Bellingham Herald just days before that the city seeks a peaceful end to the encampment. And then the city did the exact opposite by sending in militarized police, SWAT teams, and snipers to force the individuals, children, and families away from their shelters against CDC guidelines in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. Sending an armed police force is the opposite of a peaceful ending. We need housing, compassion, and creative collaboration to reach solutions. And yet, this meeting was opened with comments that further other and criminalize those in crisis at Camp 210. I stand with the community and with our houseless neighbors who are asking to be treated with basic human dignity at the bare minimum. An eviction moratorium has protected those with housing, and the city needs to extend that same protection to those without shelter until adequate shelter is available. We need more shelter, a diversity of housing options for all income levels in all neighborhoods, and treatment instead of violence towards those who need it. I want to be part of a community that values every member, regardless of housing status, economic status, age, race, gender expression, and ability. But the city's actions have proved that that is sadly not who we are today in Bellingham. No one gets elected to office with 100% of the vote, but you all represent 100% of the people, regardless of whether they have shelter or not. And right now, you're failing all of us because we have all been dehumanized by allowing the housing crisis to reach such harmful levels. And we have been even more dehumanized by the city's violence against our neighbors experiencing houselessness. COVID has shown us that we all may be just one step away from losing everything. Please show compassion, stop the sweeps, and be transparent and open with all of us, your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Next speaker, please.
Bridget Galati.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Bridget.
Thank you. My name is Bridget Galati, and I'm here to speak tonight to the council about what I witnessed on January 28th at the camp sweep at Camp 210. I went as a concerned citizen of Bellingham because I wanted to see firsthand, as a taxpayer, as a resident of this city, what my city was doing. What I saw at about 9:30 a.m. was complete chaos and utter sorrow. There were riot police, militarized police, and a group of volunteers trying to evacuate campers. We were evacuating people under threat of force with no help from the City of Bellingham in sight. And I cannot stress this enough. There were no helpers other than the volunteers. There was a group of protesters trying to hold back riot police so that myself and other volunteers could help people evacuate. When 100+ people have to suddenly evacuate from an area that they have lived in for several months, there's an incredible amount of belongings to move. What struck me most were the shoes. Single shoes without their partner, scattered amongst tarps, books, toasters, blankets. As I tried to move people's belongings, there was great confusion. Where are we moving these things to? Who's moving it? Again, volunteers were completely on their own. Campers were on their own. My heart was racing the whole time, and I did feel afraid. Not afraid of the campers, not afraid of the young people dressed in black, bravely keeping the police at bay while I tried to match up people's things. I was afraid of the militarized police, of the snipers on the rooftop, of the armored vehicles. What a shameful day in Bellingham's history. What a shameful event to explain to my children that night at dinner. What our city had done to human beings, what our city had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do instead of buying people homes, instead of getting people shelter. And so, city council members, I ask you, I plead with you, no more sweeps, emergency winter shelter now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Next speaker, please.
Tara Balabi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good evening, my name is Tara. I'm a renter, a single parent to 3 young people, and a full-time worker in Bellingham. I live in the Leonard Streets neighborhood. I'm disappointed and angry about the city's militarized response and the forcible removal of Camp 210 on the 28th. In my experience, no one camps to live in City Hall unless they have no other option for housing. To remove people in the middle of winter and take what's left of their belongings under threat of militarized police and many other law enforcement agencies was unnecessary. It caused harm to the people in our communities who are the most vulnerable, to hunger, to sickness, to this pandemic, and then to humiliation and violence. We have to do better. I'm asking you, our elected leaders, to allow temporary housing encampments and not displace and dislodge unhoused people any further. We must, as a city, provide adequate sanitation and allow people to meet their essential needs while living at temporary encampments. We must have a variety of housing possibilities for the different needs that our communities have. There isn't going to be a one solution for everybody. The city must work with the people who are unhoused and not make decisions about their well-being without their input. And if it's hard, then it is hard, but we have to do it anyway. This economy has never worked for the majority of the world's people. The existence of poverty and homelessness is a problem, as problems is evidence of this. There's so much evidence, this raging pandemic, the fact that poor people and Black and Indigenous and people of color are dying disproportionately from this pandemic is evidence of this cruel economy. At the very least, we have to allow temporary housing encampments. People have the right, everyone has the right to live, work, play, and rest safely, including people without housing. The last thing I want to ask you to do as our council and our mayor is to not tolerate racism and violence in our community. I saw the video excerpts from the BPD that the BPD posted, and even their edited versions showed them being physically confrontational and violent towards young people who were protesting. They were holding a line. They weren't being shitty people. They were the police, what I saw was that police were being disrespectful to the residents of Camp 210. They were disrespectful to the young people. And although the video they posted overwhelmingly showed white protesters, they posted pictures of Black people today on Facebook and asked the public to take action and report them to law enforcement. The comments on it are hateful and violent. And when asked, the BPD refused to take it down, saying they were monitoring the comments themselves. This is despite the fact that the people on the photos are now unsafe to walk around our city, knowing the vitriol that will be directed at them.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Tara. Next speaker, please.
Brel Fraby.
Good evening, Council. My name is Brel Froby, and would like to say that the city continues to excuse its violence and immoral sweep of Camp 210 by asserting that there is capacity at base camp. Many of you have asked the question, how many people at Camp 210 were eligible or willing to stay at base camp? We now have our answer. On the day of the sweep, only 9 more people stayed there from the night before, totaling 158 people, leaving 71 beds open. We all know that the majority of people at Camp 210 experience substance abuse disorders and mental illness, in addition to criminal records, and have been kicked out of base camp. There are no viable shelter options. Camp 210 relocated to an unused parking lot. It received another sweep notice. Every camper I've talked to says the same thing. Where do they want me to go? I turn that question to you. Where do you expect them to go? If folks can't enter base camp, then there is no viable answer to this question. Current code criminalizes homelessness. All of you have the legislative power to change this until there are viable options. It is immoral to criminalize someone's very existence just because they don't have a home. I urge all of you to be brave and do what is right. Tonight you have a piece of legislation before you that could temporarily legalize unpermitted tent and building encampments on public land. This will give other operators time to begin operations of other encampments, including a third site for Homes Now, Road to Homes encampment for elderly and disabled folks, and possibly a very low barrier encampment, which all could be operating in the spring. Give the community time to bring these options online before you continue to displace people who have nowhere else to go. It will allow people to receive basic services on public property. Pass this important piece of legislation tonight. Also, you need to do everything in your power to get indoor shelter tomorrow. People will likely die from hypothermia if you don't take action. Use emergency funds and pressure the county to get motel vouchers out to all who need it. If you have to, open up any heated indoor space the city owns in order to save lives. The proposed legislation will also permit this action. Don't let any deaths be on your hands. Do what is morally right. Pass the emergency legislation to stop the sweeps and decriminalize homelessness. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bro. Next speaker, please.
Geneva Blake.
Hello, my name is Geneva Blake. I'm a resident of Bellingham. And I sat in on some of the meetings of the council this afternoon, the Health and Safety and Justice Committee and the Committee of the Whole. And I learned a great deal about the resources and services currently available, and notably the gap between the emergency situation that currently exists for those who are unsheltered and what may be possible in a few months' time. Severe weather is upon us now. I want to echo the urgency expressed by council members this afternoon to find ways to address the immediate acute needs of the people who are displaced from the encampment at 210 Lottie Street, as well as others who are living outside dispersed throughout Bellingham and Whatcom County. For a number of reasons, some people cannot or have chosen not to make use of spaces that are available at base camp or the overflow shelter. You know, whatever your opinion of base camp, it simply cannot serve everyone. Couples must sleep separately. Families with children cannot stay there. People who are not able to stay clean and sober are not allowed to stay. There's no privacy, and options for storing belongings are extremely limited. Tiny homes are the only other form of shelter available, but all the tiny homes we have are currently full, and no additional ones will be ready for weeks or possibly months. So I want to press the council and the mayor to keep moving forward from the conversation you started this afternoon. Get creative about broadening and bending and stretching the rules to find ways to keep people safe, dry and warm and fed, and get connected to services during the next few months that will allow them some expectation of stability rather than being constantly on edge, not knowing when they will have to pick up and move at a moment's notice. Really focus on that gap and how it can be filled right now, not in a few months' time. You can start by committing to ending camp cleanups and sweeps immediately. You have some legislation before you, I understand, that will cover much of these needs so that people can be assured that they won't have to keep running. And now is the time to redouble your efforts to build and rebuild partnerships with community organizations, religious institutions, government agencies, and service providers so that we can work together to address the immediate need and find longer-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Geneva. Next speaker, please.
Gloria Tennyson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Gloria Bennett Tennyson, and I live in downtown Bellingham. Hello? I rent from the Opportunity Council. And excuse me for how I speak, I have a neurological problem from court-ordered meds. And I'll talk about how I became homeless, and I'm going to talk from experience. 5 years ago, I was living with my mother, and I have an issue with the Blaine Police. They made me homeless. At first, I slept in Birch Bay in my car, and I was embarrassed to speak at first because I come from an influential family, I'm told. But now I'm not embarrassed anymore. I want to see change. The sheriff kept asking me to move, so I came into Bellingham to live in my car. I slept on the streets of Bellingham. I was scared, and I want to talk about safety. It's most important here. In Blaine, I caught the investigation into them. I know how to call the Justice Department and all that, and I've done that about Bellingham and what happened here on January 28th. But 5 years ago, I was sleeping in a car scared. I had a knife. I wouldn't even go outside to go to the bathroom. So I was housed by the Opportunity Council, and I was so grateful. And I'll tell you, these case managers work hard, but there is no change. I live in a complex where I can't call the police more or tell the Opportunity Council. You want to talk about drugs and homelessness and guns? It's been happening here. So I want to talk about when you house people, there's got to be rules and they got to stick to them. You don't reward for unacceptable behavior. I live in a place that is so infested with meth that it will have to be torn down. I've thrown out a life ring for almost 4 years to try to get a lifeboat to come in and save us. But this camp downtown, I walk constantly. I walk through there. I got an idea to mask myself up where nobody'd know me and go into the camp a week or two before they executed without a solution. I have never seen, oh, I'm so embarrassed, with no plan. And the snipers I see, I saw videos on our own American citizens. Now there's all levels of homelessness. There's all different situations what bring people to homelessness. But I want to see change, and I want to see people do their job. I can't cry out more for change.
Thank you, Gloria. Just a reminder to speakers that if you are listening to the feed of the meeting, where you're calling from or where you're connected, to make sure to turn that volume down, and that will cut back on the feedback and allow us to hear you more clearly. Next speaker, please, Elizabeth.
Daniel Rep.
Thank you. One moment. My name is Daniel Rep, and tonight I'd like to address 3 matters. Firstly, I strongly oppose the January 28th clear out of the City Hall encampment. Members of this council have acknowledged that base camp is not a solution for everyone experiencing homelessness. Still, the city's message around the sweep has consistently been telling campers to go to base camp and citing its unfilled capacity. I know the early sweep was not a ruse and that the intent was to avoid a clash with protesters. But whatever the intent, that early sweep hurt trust between the public and the city. I know the city has made progress with Swift Haven. I hear city leadership's frustration at a rejected proposal for a similar project. But the fact is, at the time of the clear out, many campers still had nowhere to go. Finding solutions for emergency shelter and permanent housing is difficult, but we must finish that work, not simply clear campers out. Next, I want to briefly touch on at the last council meeting, which I watched to the end, many council members expressed outrage at the profanity used during last week's public comment. And I appreciate the discussion in committee meetings this afternoon, focusing their concern on personal attacks and reaffirming the value of public comment. Councilmember Stone, you articulated the expectations and the rationale behind them well at the intro to tonight's public comment section. I do want to caution the council, however, not to dismiss the content of what the public is sharing. However you feel about explicit language, I remind you that the unmet physical needs of our neighbors facing winter with no homes should upset us much more and therefore take more of our attention and energy. Finally, I want to stress the needs of campers right now at Frank Gehry Fields. Number 1, they need a guarantee that they will not be removed from their current location. Ann Deacon shared this afternoon that some campers are individuals that it is challenging for the government to help, but other entities can help them. The current encampment can act as such an entity, so let them help. Prevent the escalation we saw with the City Hall encampment. I ask you to either issue a permit for the present encampment or designate a new location where they can be. Number 2, Frank Gehry Fields needs access to sanitation services. I visited the encampment this weekend and I heard from a volunteer there that water has been cut off to the restroom facilities of the parking lot. These people need a place to use the restroom. They need a place to wash up. These are basic needs which are even more important during COVID. Please restore water to the restrooms to provide for campers' needs. And finally, people experiencing homelessness in Bellingham need housing. I know you have started the work, and I know it is difficult, but we must finish the work and not clear encampments with surprise and force by providing diverse, legitimate housing solutions for everyone. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Daniel. Next speaker, please.
Rianne Bardsley.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rhiannon Bardsley. I continue to be heartbroken by the behaviors and actions of the City of Bellingham. On the city's website, it states, "We remain certain that our response was necessary to protect the safety of everyone involved." Though I do not doubt that safety was an important factor in the decision-making, I do wonder about whose safety was prioritized. I wonder how those making these decisions believe that people who are living at Camp 210 are now safer. Sweeps, as have been mentioned, are in violation of both CDC guidance and Governor Inslee's proclamation that is effective through March of this year. For more than 12 years, I was a partner with the city in a variety of capacities, and sadly, what has been demonstrated over and over again is that the goal of the city elected officials and those in positions of power at the city is not to solve homelessness, but to remove it from the public sight. Sweeping is effective in only reaching that goal. I decided to speak here tonight to ask that we, the broader public and elected officials, approach these camps and individuals with genuine compassion, humility, and truth, to understand that these camps and homelessness itself is the result of systemic issues and that we need systemic solutions. Sweeping only causes more harm, trauma, and distrust. Sweeps do not make the vulnerable safer. It only further dehumanizes and isolates. I wonder what we could do if we remained diligent to be creative and collaborative. I wonder what we would and could do if sweeps were not an option for us to utilize. I wonder if we were prioritizing guidelines such as Hannah reviewed with us all at the beginning of this. Would we have had snipers on roofs? Would that be part of the guidelines? Would we have a militarized show of power? These guidelines and respect that is being requested fairly by the council, but looks very much like a one-way street at this point. Let's spend our limited resources, energy, and time acting in ways that are grounded in the stated legacies and strategic commitments of the City of Bellingham. Some of those include creating a sense of place, having a safe and prepared community, having quality, responsive city services, and demonstrating our commitment to equity and social justice. These are the stated values of the City of Bellingham. One way to live into these stated values is to stop all sweeps and care for those who are in poverty as much as we care for those who are not. I respectfully ask that we stop harming each other, and as elected officials, we are looking to you to lead those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Next speaker, please.
Catherine Orlowski.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Catherine.
This is Catherine Orlowski. I've been a resident of Bellingham for several years, previous board member of Homes Now, longtime advocate for the homeless, volunteer of the food bank, very rooted into the scene of poverty because I've been tossed aside by society because of a unique situation. Ended up homeless in Seattle, King County, in a tent with my children because of medical stuff. I want to first thank everyone who's worked on this, especially the local community members, locals who have stepped up and joined this effort to take a stand against the narratives. This stand is growing momentum. More people are joining, and be real careful, council members. You may find value in spreading accurate narratives because everyone across the globe is watching. We have an opportunity to show the rest of the world what compassion really is. Today, I learned about a family who was kicked out of a motel basically because they were told they were too infested. And then the children were playing too loudly, not because of anything criminal, not because of anything civil, but they were lost access and told to freeze outside. And Opportunity Council, they're working directly with Opportunity Council. I see a message on Facebook saying they need drinking water because they couldn't find drinking water. So now the community outreach team has band together to get them what they need out of our own pockets, out of our own money. Some of us, which we only have food stamps ourselves, because the paid people are not doing their jobs and they're spreading false information. I've emailed Opportunity Council through this whole thing. I've emailed and brought homeless individuals to base camp, and I need accurate, true information given to the community because the community is watching and that you have to build trust with us. This family is now freezing outside. They don't have any real resources. I contacted the Opportunity Council's outreach team, the HOT team. I still have not got a call back. You're not being given accurate information as council members from these organizations. I don't know why. I don't know. But what we're telling you is true. It's very frustrating. It's happened to me as a human being. It's happening to so many other people. And this is gaining momentum. We know what we're talking about. We're not making this up. And this is true. Our community lacks resources. I've also further went to contact other citizens in other states to find out what their encampments were going on. And it's happening all over the place. I gander to say all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next speaker, please.
Morgan Bartlett.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Morgan.
All right, sweet. So my name is Morgan Bartlett. I go by JJ Bartlett. I work full-time down in Seattle doing outreach and case management work in the university district with houseless young adults, excuse me. Bellingham is my hometown. I grew up there. I was born there. And I've been up on weekends helping out at Camp 210, which is the subject of my call here tonight. The options that have been promoted by the city, as other speakers have said thus far, that being base camp and the lighthouse mission, I believe, among others, are complete non-starters. And this is obvious to anyone who actually does this kind of work. I've been doing this kind of work for a year. Not only do these sites lack the physical space to solve the problem, but the high barrier model they employ reproduces the same oppressive atmosphere you'll find in any quote unquote standard nonprofit shelter. It's the same situation down here in Seattle. I have multiple people who have told me straight up they will not stay in shelters because it makes them feel unsafe and it makes them feel oppressed, especially if there are any LGBTQ persons. The city offers these non-starter options, feigns surprise when no one bites, because I respect the city council too much to say that they don't know. I believe that they know. Then employs incredible shows of force with taxpayer dollars rather than solve the problem. These sweeps are not only a waste of money, they're a public health risk, as others have said. It makes no sense to respect the expertise of health officials only when it's politically convenient. If we're making a big deal, as we should, about what Erica had to say, we should also be listening to the CDC, which I believe a few other speakers have said the direct quote. I'll say the direct quote again. Clearing encampments can cause people to disperse throughout the community and break connections with service providers. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is as a case manager to try and find my client after a sweep has happened. It is near impossible because on their mind is not their connection to their caseworker. It's not their connection to their medication. It's getting out of that area because there's 50 plus cops fully loaded, snipers on the roof. They need to leave. So sweeps are not a solution. Base camp is not a solution. And lighthouse mission is not a solution. The only real solution that we have is housing for all. And this is not an outlandish thing. We have the resources to do it. We have the skill set to do it. The only thing that we're lacking is leadership with the political will to get it done. And I think that's something that can change. I think the political will can be gained. It comes from comments like this. So housing is a human right, and it's long past time we started treating it that way, and it's long past time our leadership started treating it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Next speaker, please.
HK.
And please state your name for the record.
Hello, City Council persons, neighbors, and friends. Is my sound okay?
It is. Please state your full name for the record.
Heather Katahdin speaking. I wish to appreciate our community's efforts to work together to maintain our community health for all our people. I'm also sad for our community, especially this winter, experiencing how many more people are left outside without shelter, without a safe family. I was at camp late the night before the January 28th operation on Lottie Street, assisting those who were attempting to pack and depart before a sweep. May we respect each human being. May our divisions be healed. May each person have the freedom and the safety to share their voice and to experience safety when they need to lay down to rest. I've met and listened to many of my neighbors who were unsheltered and living outside, who are humble, strong people, who share what they have and receive only what they need. I've not been able to find some of my neighbors that were forced out on January 28th from their simple tent or pallet home shelters while being surrounded by hundreds of community members, including armed law enforcement, and as videos have shown, humans with assault weapons on the rooftops while loud helicopters were overhead filming. I understand the timing decision was made by a team of staff. I don't understand why a contract to create another emergency tiny home shelter has been delayed for weeks. I understand concerns of safety continue while the reality of healing from trauma post-January 28th operation continues daily. Each day there are citizens who lay down at night not knowing if they will wake up surrounded by guns, strangers, news helicopters filming them. The trauma experienced each time a neighbor is forced to leave where they have been resting and sleeping is immense. I'm thankful for the current privilege to experience safety when I lay down to rest. I'm thankful to have shelter from the strong elemental effects of rain, snow, winter. The weather is predicted to be colder these coming days. I apologize for repeating my request from past months, past years. Please take action to create, during the severe weather, a couple nighttime urban warming centers that provide shelter from the rain, wind, snow, and has access to fresh air, drinking water, bathroom access, a warming beverage that is open to all our people, all genders, all cultures, all economic capabilities, all levels of health. May our collective humanity expand to include each of us in securing a safe place for.
Thank you, Heather. Next speaker, please.
Scott Smith.
Hi, City Council. Scott Smith here. Thanks for the opportunity to share my experience. My family lives in the Puget neighborhood near Salmon Woods. There have always been signs of homeless camps here, but last summer the camps grew exponentially. We saw an increase in neighborhood crime. The camp spilled onto the main trails. My family members and I were harassed. The camps were swept, and BPD informed us that over 60 needles were found. One of the campers had been party to a drug overdose fatality. The residents moved just one block west to the corner of Puget Fraser, where they have been since, and new campers moved into Salmon Woods. Despite all this, we were excited when Homes Now announced Swift Haven. Doug and the Homes Now organization has been great about communicating with the neighborhood and addressing our concerns. Their camp is clean, quiet, and maintains itself. We need more solutions like this. We weren't surprised when Camp 210 was swept and the residents relocated to Frank Gehry Fields. Since then, we've seen uncontrolled fires in the baseball dugouts, mental health crisis episodes, and an exponential increase of trash, car alarms going off during the night, and a lack of mask wearing. After more sweeps were announced, some campers left, but the trash piles have been growing daily. We know there are registered sex offenders and felons as part of this camp who can't take advantage of the solutions available. If these people can't take care of themselves and can't manage fires, then an unsupervised, no barriers camp is not a viable option for our community. We all want things to improve for these people, but the City of Bellingham is not legally or financially equipped. The homeless crisis needs to be addressed at a state or federal level. We need to acknowledge that although homelessness, mental health, and addiction are often intertwined, we can only help those who will accept our help. In closing, the camp at Gary Field is not safe and should not be allowed to maintain. These people need a place, but it is not Frank Gary Field. Those of us that do want to help the homeless should do so by donating to known solutions like Homes Now, not by funding protests which lead to conflict but advance no viable solution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Next speaker, please.
Elizabeth Jennings.
Hello, am I on?
You are. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Council President Stone, council members, Mayor Fleetwood, Liz Jennings here, homeowner for 15 years in the Sunnyland neighborhood. I'm also a volunteer member of your Community Development Advisory Board, speaking tonight in my capacity as a private citizen and not on behalf of CDAB. So you guys, you're missing a huge opportunity here. I'm here to ask y'all in the legislative and executive branches of city government, like, be bold, man. Like, now is the time to be putting forward a vision for our future for affordable housing, and you are missing out. Give us a vision for the future, help us rally behind it, and let's get more affordable housing built. Pass the laws necessary to provide basic human rights now for our homeless neighbors during the pandemic, but also provide leadership. Give us a path forward. I am done being an apologist for our city's policies. I almost resigned from CDAB after the first militarized sweep of Camp 210. And as a volunteer, this breaks my heart because I helped get the Bellingham Home Fund passed. That wouldn't have happened without people who are now on our city council and who are now our mayor. And so it's mind-boggling to me that we're in this situation where I'm having to ask you for this. We've built over 800 affordable homes, built or preserved with the Bellingham Home Fund. I know your commitment to housing and ending homelessness. It infuriates me to see you, my friends, targeted personally, and at the same time, we can do so much more. I know how much we are doing. I know how much our nonprofits are doing, but I'm done being an apologist as soon as you put militarized police on the roof of our public facilities. And the fact that these sweeps happened with no assistance for the people to relocate and have another dignified option. So this is your moment for boldness. Come on. It's time for policy solutions that actually put housing first. We can't let NIMBYs bully us into keeping inclusionary zoning out of our single family neighborhoods. We need 15% of larger multifamily housing facilities to be permanently affordable. We need to reduce barriers to development. We need to stop the sweeps. We need to create policy and infill. We can do this. Give us a vision.
Time. Thank you, Liz. Next speaker, please.
Kat Finch.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Kat. We can hear you.
Great. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what everyone's been saying. I agree with it. I'm just appalled that there were, snipers and things in my backyard. I've grown up here. And I'm sorry. It is, like everyone said, below freezing. We need immediate action, but we also need compassionate action. We need to like listen to like the voices of saying that there are solutions, that we are ready to put in place, that we are ready to care for people, and like not putting that burden on people who are already struggling and so ready to like push that action forward and to give it to people and grow it with people who could like take it and do so much more. It's really frustrating that the amount of money spent to sweep peaceful citizens of our community away and out and as far away as they could get, like, is more than most of us make in a year, with perhaps like the exception of some of the people on the council and our mayor. But like, you're civil servants. Why are you not serving the houseless? They are, you know, a part of our community. And as others have said, they're like down and out on their luck. They're in a bad place. And like, why would we torment them further? Why would we make their lives more difficult when we don't need to? It's very frustrating to have to like, you know, go in and give what you can, give someone a coffee, but like you can't give more. And I think that there is a lot of people who are putting the actions for those homes in place and for like getting this to be like an affordable and safe and happy community. So there you go. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Kat. Next speaker, please.
Imogene Gilmore Baldwin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I think that a lot of what people have been saying is quite clear, what we're asking, what we're wanting, but I would just like to push a little further into your guys' empathy, because the language that some of you guys have used to talk about Camp 210 residents, to talk about some of the protesters, is a little condescending, and a little lacking in empathy and care and compassion. Saying that some of the protesters are dangerous and that, that it's dangerous and that it is offensive. I think that a lot of actions around Camp 210 could be described as dangerous and offensive. First of all, it's offensive that there is money for a militarized sweep of Camp 210, but there isn't enough money or resources or time to be put into finding adequate shelter and support for this community. I think that it is offensive that people who have jobs in school and other aspects of their life are giving all that they can, are spending all their time and efforts and getting supplies and volunteering and raising money and helping this community, when that is supposed to be your guys' job. If we can't trust our officials to help keep us safe, to help keep us housed, to have access to water, think about not having those things. And instead of sweeping and taking stuff that people put so much effort into getting for them that weren't yours to take, it's disgusting and it's painful to see. And I just think we can do a lot better. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Imogen. Next speaker, please.
Marcus D.
Marcus, are you there?
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Marcus.
Hi, I just wanted to let you all know that I just yesterday had an email back and forth with Patrick Diller of Pallet Shelters, and 100 tiny homes could be delivered onto your lot within 3 days. I just want you to know that. I want to talk to you about Camp 2, as they're calling it. I want to talk to you about a lot of things about it, actually, but I've been hearing the stuff that's been going on in the meetings today. There's been a rewrite of history, You have to excuse me. I had to rush back to my phone. But let's be careful about this. I know darn well from personal contact, went back and forth with mission staff, with Hot Team. They did not come in. And then we're being told they came in repeatedly, and then they were chased out. That there's some documentation that bring it. But other than that, what I want to talk to you all tonight about is, please, let's get these shelters going. I mean, please. They're going to freeze out there. It is your responsibility. Don't let them die. Don't let them die. Is there a protest down there at Camp 2? Has anyone approached them to ask? It's a camp. Don't let them die. Don't let them die. These are my clients. I've known these people for years. Don't let them die. These are my advocates and my coworkers who've been out saving these same people in your streets for years. Don't let them fail. Don't let them die. Please. Does this sound like hackneyed or something? Don't let them die. There's no warming shelter available, like promised over 3 weeks ago by SATPA. We have no identified cold weather shelter, and the cold weather is upon us. Would you like to step out into that right now and just stand there without a jacket for a while? Don't let them die. Please don't let them die. Don't change this narrative either. If you want people to come in and meet these people, you just tell them to come on in and meet their people. If you got their medications, you bring them their medications, please. Ain't nobody stopping you. That's a lie. Don't listen to that stuff. Don't listen to that stuff. Listen to your heart. Listen to your advocates. Listen to the people who you've been listening to for years, saying the exact same message for years. Please don't let them die. Let's catch them all this spring in a common sense way. Let's buy these shelters and make this go together, shall we? All together now, okay? Let's do it. I don't want to hear anybody denying that there were snipers or what. The whole fact, that was a shame. And it's an embarrassment. It's a black eye on Bellingham. It's history now. Let's step forward. Don't let them die. Please don't let them die. I yield.
Thank you, Marcus. Next speaker, please.
Emily Castle.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Emily.
Great. I am calling to demand that you all pass the aforementioned legislation that will stop sweeps while we find real adequate housing solutions, and that we are providing emergency shelter immediately with the impending freezing weather for our unhoused residents. It has been brought up, but it bears repeating that sweeps are advised against by the CDC and are unlawful by our state ordinances. You are displacing people with nowhere to go. The sweep on January 28th was violent and shameful. We have somehow decided to change the narrative, but it was our community standing up for our community. Mayor Fleetwood spoke about a body cam video where an officer shows restraint, but I'd like to bring up the videos that have circulated of BPD at the sweep not wearing masks over their nose, or the video where an unmasked cop is handed a mask and puts it in his pocket instead of putting it on. You are letting your citizens down, and you are trying to change the narrative to make it seem as though there is a common enemy other than your all's inaction. I want to say, these are people. These are human beings. These are people with lives. The protesters, the residents of Camp 210, it is disgusting to do this to actual human beings. I am ashamed to be someone that lives here. I am devastated and outraged that my tax dollars go toward a militarized response when your citizens have been asking for real, honest housing solutions for years. I have been regularly listening into city council meetings for the last 4 months, and I don't think there's been a single one where it has not been brought up at public comment. In October, when we were discussing the budget, people brought it up. It gets brought up all the time because it is the most pressing issue we have in our community, and you all refuse to take it seriously. I am tired of hearing that things will be ready in a few months when there has not been a month that this has not been brought up. Your failures are leading to violence. You are hurting the people you claim to serve. I don't know how you sleep at night. I would not be able to, but it's not too late to stop sweeps and allow us to really work and make actual change for our community. Please, we are asking for something that is so crucial, and you all act like it is something that can be put off, something we don't understand. Please do what is in your power, which is so much more than what you are doing. You are letting your community down, you are failing your residents, and you are failing your elected positions. I yield my time.
Thank you, Emily. Next speaker, please.
Jack Spivak.
Hello.
Hello, Jack, go ahead.
Hi, I live across the street from Jerry Fields. You know, walking around it this whole year hasn't been used for much. I know that why the tiny homes haven't been built. You haven't found a location, and you've been trying really hard, and I acknowledge that. It's tricky when no one wants to have these people have a safe place for them in their area. I know the port bought the land that the city was trying to acquire, and that the airport has said that it's against their code. But there's a hotel in the area that is also against the same code that serves them better. I know that even if these tiny homes were built, they have a lot of barriers for the people who need them. You have to be sober for one. That's what they told me when I asked the one by my house. And addiction is a huge reason people become homeless in the first place. And I believe that everyone deserves shelter and a place to exist that isn't freezing. Until we are able to find a place for the tiny homes, these sweeps are only causing violence. I saw it when they moved here. So many people lost their things ever since they've been here. They they've been good neighbors to me. And I know a cop said that there were a break-in in businesses across the street, and that's part of the reason why they want to sweep it. But we have to make a decision whether we value the property or these people's lives more. Please ban these sweeps. They are unnecessary violence, and let's let these people have a place to be safe until the city can find more land, and also lower the barriers on these shelters so that all these people can have a place to stay. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Jack. Next speaker, please.
Giordano Michelle.
Hello. My name is Giordano. And yeah, I support the city council in passing emergency legislation to put a stop to sweeps and allow unpermitted encampments on public land, and for at least 60 days. And I would also ask that, considering the weather forecast, that you secure hotel rooms for those who do not want to or are barred from using base camp as a shelter. And I also suggest going beyond the immediate emergency needs and fund a non-hierarchical, community-run, no-barrier housing option that would alleviate future need for emergency legislation next winter. Yeah, I mean, there's needs for a variety of shelter options because not everybody has the same needs. It just makes sense. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to remind you guys that when the protesters show up, they show up as citizens and as individuals of the community. And when police show up, they show up with an entire oppressive state behind them and power to legally brutalize people. So yeah, I don't thank law enforcement for their actions on January 28th, and I don't thank the mayor for that either. Yeah, the police were there to kick people out of their shelters at the orders of the mayor without the vote, as you know, of the council. And it was community members who were helping campers move their belongings and holding the city workers and cops back from trashing people's belongings. So yeah, I think that all charges against those that were brought to those on January 28th should be dropped because the action by the city that day was unprecedented. And yeah, I mean, it's not as simple as stopping sweeps. You need to decriminalize drugs and abolish the police and provide low-cost housing and no barrier housing and start a rent cap and yeah, just have more affordable housing. It's a systemic issue and it needs to be treated as such. So yeah, I mean, a few months ago, the community spoke asking that you defund Bellingham Police Department and use the money for housing. And here we are spending an exorbitant amount of money on cops to sweep the camp at City Hall. So yeah, I highly recommend the City Council all take some psilocybin and read Our Prisons Obsolete. I yield my time.
Thank you, Giordano. Next speaker, please.
Heidi Inkloset.
Hi there. My name is Heidi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Heidi. Go ahead.
Okay. I am fully in support of the council passing emergency legislation to put a stop to sweeps and allow unpermitted encampments on public land for a bare minimum of 60 days. I would also ask that instead of wasting the budget employing city workers to participate in sweeps, you employ them to actually enforce the dog leash laws in our parks for a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Next speaker, please.
Allie Willis.
Hello, my name is Allie Willis. I've lived downtown on Holly Street for about 10 years now. I'm also here to indicate my support for my unsheltered neighbors residing at what we call Camp 210. I believe that the fact that the encampment exists despite base camp's presence is de facto proof that it is needed in this community right now. It's upsetting that some people seem to want to measure our housing crisis by how much they have to look at it. Nobody in Bellingham gets to gatekeep humanity or decide who is worthy of basic human rights. So here you are considering some emergency legislation that would put a stop to sweeps and allow encampments to exist on public land for 60 days. As I understand it, all you folks need to do is bring this to a vote tonight. So I'm asking you to do so and to please vote in favor of such legislation. My neighbors have sufficiently articulated all my feelings about the moral reprehensibility and ultimate frivolousness of that last sweep and the kind of militarized show of force that went along with it. So really, I would like to see my city following CDC guidelines for people experiencing homelessness, specifically the considerations for encampments, which just say we need to allow people to stay where they are and we need to work together and we need to ensure that nearby restrooms have soap and water and stuff. None of that really seems out of reach for Bellingham. So again, I'm just calling on the leaders of the city to please vote on and pass that legislation to stop sweeps and allow encampments on public land. Please tell us that you will end sweeps. Housing is a human right. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you, Allie. Next speaker, please.
Nicole Smith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Nicole. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nicole Smith. Usually I time myself so I don't get cut off, but there's so much to say so that I'm just going to go ahead and talk until you do. First of all, I heard that y'all have the possibility to bring a piece of legislation to vote that could stop sweeps, even though, according to the city and BPD websites, they're already supposed to be stopped because they're illegal. Please, for the love of all that is good, decent, or even logical, do this. City Council repeatedly says that they can't do anything but vote on legislation. Fine, then it's time for you to do that. The CDC says that encampments should be allowed to stay intact and cities should provide additional sanitation services. Y'all really think you're smarter than the CDC? I'm personally not having it. Listen to the experts and listen to the crumb of logic and decency that I believe is somewhere inside you. Stop the sweeps. Don't let this violent absurdity continue for another moment. The temperatures are going to be in the teens at night this week, and there will be multiple dates when the daytime temperatures never even go above freezing. This is so incredibly dangerous for people who are living on the streets. Y'all need to get people in hotels, rent a heated warehouse, or provide about 200 propane heating towers immediately, or risk the very real possibility of hypothermia and deaths. Every single winter, this is an issue, and you've had since March last year to plan for an increased amount of homelessness due to COVID, and yet all of your attempts to do even the bare minimum to solve this issue are number one, late, and number two, woefully lacking in the capacity needed. I'm sick of the endless talking. Take some action. Mayor, a lot of the same things I hear you say at these meetings are the same things I see rabid Trump supporters saying in the comments section of the BBD's Facebook posts. Like literally the exact same. You're commending the agency that has a $36 million budget, yet attempts to crowdfund detective work from its rabid racist fan base by publicly posting a picture of a Black woman and asking people to find them. You're commending an agency who actively targets and harasses people who fight to defend human dignity while simultaneously looking the other way when white supremacists show up armed and ready to intimidate. Considering that you live in a house worth $750,000 that your mom gave you, you have a lot of audacity to talk down on young people who are literally putting their bodies in front of police to buy time for houseless folks to remove their belongings. You keep talking about the tactics of protesters when you literally sent out a miniature army to evict people in the middle of winter without providing any other options, like you openly lied about the week before. Residents of Camp 210 were woken up with guns in their faces, so think about that. City Council, if you really want to show up, you'll tell your mayor and BPD to stop targeting and harassing protesters. Tell them to drop all charges immediately and put that energy into the growing factions of far-right white supremacists that are being encouraged to flourish.
Thank you, Nicole. Next speaker, please.
Joseph Dean.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Give me a moment. My name is Joseph Dean. I use he, him pronouns, and I am speaking as a concerned citizen of Bellingham. I've been living here for the past 6 years, and I just want to reiterate what my fellow community members have mentioned, especially about the immediate need for water to be restored to the campers. That is such a need for just using the restroom and hygiene, and that can be done immediately. So I'm just really pleading to the City Council to do that as soon as possible for the campers. And I just want to say the consistent and violent attacks on the unsheltered community is completely despicable during these freezing temperatures during a pandemic, and when the houselessness is on the rise, such an attack on our fellow neighbors is simply sickening. What little the Bellingham City Council has done and Mayor Fleetwood have done is not enough. We have been asking and pleading for months for temporary houses for our unsheltered neighbors. Imagine what we could do if we put all of our energy into social services and housing these folks instead of violently displacing them. All that stood between riot police and snipers were a small group of volunteers and advocates who are creating
Joseph Dean, we can't hear you.
Since that promise has not been followed up on. Bellingham has shown time and time again that they value property over human lives and how they have repeatedly treated houseless people. I want to address Mayor Fleetwood and the council's treatments towards organizers, volunteers, and concerned citizens. It is simply despicable to even claim that these violent protesters, these are your neighbors defending themselves. And may I remind the council and Mayor Fleetwood, Mayor Fleetwood did come to this sweep and watched this heinous and violent act happen before he went behind police lines, and when he was confronted with the outrage over the violent displacement of unsheltered individuals. We are not forget what happened on January 28th, no matter how much you censor or ignore us. I want to plead with the council, with the city council and the mayor to use the power that they have to put their energy towards lasting issues. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Joseph. Next speaker, please.
Eric B.
Hello, we're working on it.
Eric, we can hear you. Go ahead.
He's coming.
Yeah, go ahead and start the timer. He'll be here in just a sec. Yeah. Just talk. But...
Hi, guys. My name is Eric Ballweber. You know, I represent 210 down here. You know, and we appreciate all the community support we've been receiving out here. We know you people can't, you know, you don't have to be doing this, but you care out of the kindness of your heart, and we're very much appreciative of that. You know, what I started down here at the 210 2.0 is that I instituted zero tolerance for violence here, because I knew that some of my campers who I love and know personally were being connected to violence that was slowing down the process for this. And so I put no tolerance for violence. It's been working. We've had maybe 4 incidents the whole time we've been here. When at 210 Lottie, we're dealing with incidents, multiple incidents every single day. So we know this is working because it's not chaos right now. But if we are given the opportunity to show the community that we're willing to cooperate and respect ourselves, then this can be something great. You know, I see this going all over the place, but this is like the example. Give us a chance for the example we need. These people know how to respect themselves. Okay, and the people that don't can be taught. It's something you can learn. And you know, it's my personal mission to be behind this camp 110%. I'm going to make sure and do what I can to make sure the safety and the needs of these people are met. And so I'm here because I love the city and I love you guys, and I thank you for everything. You know, our mayor may be a little desensitized or what have you, but you know, without Bellingham, without you guys, we'd be just another group in the cold. This be just another jungle. But this ain't the jungle, because we got a volunteer tent here. We got community support like I've never seen before. This is unprecedented for me. You know, and so I feel like we can be the example, and we can be the leaders, and we can be the, you know, vanguard on this whole thing and spearhead a movement that can go nationwide. You know, people can take care of themselves. They can learn how to respect themselves. And all we need is people who are willing to be accountable and willing to be held accountable. And everybody in this camp is on board with that. You know, we had a couple of trouble campers here. They've decided they don't want to live here anymore. So the vibes here is really good. They're really good energy. And if there's people at base camp or what have you that don't feel safe, they want to feel safe, they can come here. And this is a place where you can be safe and secure, and you can have dignity and respect until something permanent is made for us to happen. So thank you guys for all your participation, and reach out to the community. I love you guys out there in the community supporting us. We're doing the best we can, and we're streamlining this. We're going to adapt. Everybody's behind adapting here. So, you know, there's no reason why we can't organize on our own. We have group meetings here at night, and we talk about and we voice our concerns. So everybody has a voice here, and that's important. So thank you guys. I got to get busy.
Thank you, Eric. Next speaker, please.
Emily Keeg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Emily.
Hi, my name's Emily Keogh, and I'm a resident of Bellingham. I'm a student, and I'm one of the people who has been down at Camp 210 trying to do the work that you, our elected representatives, are meant to be doing. I stand behind most everything that the previous commentators have mentioned so far. I am here to demand an end to the violent sweeps, a provision of emergency shelter, and permanent housing for all. I want to stress again the urgency of the situation. As previously stated, the next 5 nights are going to drop below freezing. People need shelter immediately, and if you think or say that there's nothing you can do about it, you're not only wrong, but you're uncreative and lazy. Your ignorance and apathy are straight up killing people. Additionally, Even if you can't actively help in the moment, the least you can do is stop the targeted harassment of houseless folks. Whatever you're calling them, sweeps, cleanups, forced relocations, they are illegal. And if you don't believe me, read your own bloody website. These sweeps don't help or fix anything. All they do is traumatize and brutalize people. On January 28th, the police were not there to help anybody. They stood and watched with their guns and tasers and a freaking tank while college kids scrambled to help people gather up their lives and all of their worldly possessions. BPD recently posted a video on their Facebook page taken from a body cam footage. And within the first 2 minutes, I watched a police officer grab a man by the head and force him to the ground. That man, not the officer, was later arrested for assault on a police officer. And yet you still have the audacity to say that the police were there to help. Check your vision. Stop trying to cover the problem up. Stop lying to your constituents. Strap on a pair and actually do something useful. I yield my time. Good night.
Thank you, Emily. Next speaker, please.
Indy Slama.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Indy.
Hi, good evening, members of the Bellingham City Council. My name is Indy Slama, and I've been a Whatcom County resident for almost 10 years. The vast majority of that time, I've been a healthcare worker here in this town, so I'm deeply committed to providing care for this community. I'm impressed by the city and county's ability to come together to keep COVID levels relatively low, and I'm proud to have taken part in that effort. I'm also a person who has previously been unhoused, and right here in this town. And I'm very deeply troubled by what occurred on January 28th. And I urge you to do whatever you can to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The militarized police response, including the presence of Border Patrol of all things on January 28th, seems to suggest that our city views Camp 210 as some sort of terrorist organization. This simply is not the case. They are unhoused people organizing political action and civil disobedience during a very real housing crisis, which is their right. The mayor attempted to make a distinction between the campers themselves, who are quote unquote peaceful, and those who showed up on January 28th with the intention of helping and protecting those campers. And characterizing them as somehow not the same as the campers themselves. It's important to note that the campers themselves make no such distinction. Have there been instances of violence that have, that have made community members feel unsafe? Yes. But certainly the overwhelming police response was a dangerous overreaction that only escalated the situation. I truly hope the City of Bellingham and Whatcom County will choose a more compassionate and humane approach moving forward. Please stand down. Many of these folks are dealing with a lot of untreated trauma, mental health issues, addictions, etc., and it seems only right that we take the high road as a community and come together to meet their basic needs. Putting aside the question of whether a militarized police response was justified, appropriate, or even necessary, it was absolutely not a compassionate or trauma-informed response. This heavy-handed approach only served to re-victimize people who are already at the bottom of society and without resources and support. Moreover, it was not at all effective at putting these people into safe, stable, and accessible housing. In summation, I urge you all to reconsider if this is really who we want to be and how we want to use our resources in our police force as a community. Safe, stable, and accessible housing is the answer to homelessness, not law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Indy. It is 9 o'clock. It's going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. period, which we alluded to at the beginning of public comment. And I imagine that will be an ongoing discussion as we continue to just grapple with ways to better communicate as well with the public. When I think about the sheer volume of emails and voicemails, and when there are topics of that are very timely and important to our city and our community, how best to engage and ensure that voices are heard and that we can make best decisions possible as policymakers for the entire city. So that discussion will be going forward, but those interested in watching that can certainly go back and watch the recording of that meeting. And then the final agenda item was a City Hall encampment discussion, which was led by Mayor Fleetwood, along with Police Chief Flo Simon and the Director of Public Works and Natural Resources, Eric Johnston, to discuss the encampment at 210 Lottie Street, as well as the cleanup effort that was taken on January 28th. And an opportunity for robust discussion with the council, as well as just looking at next steps and where we go. So once again, I would just encourage the community to go back and watch that meeting if you weren't able to watch it live this afternoon. And just to emphasize that, as I think we ended the meeting, just saying that this is to be continued and ongoing, and certainly not the end. And I did want to make just one announcement. I know that there were some, I guess there were some breaks in coverage. BTV was streaming live earlier today, but we had gone over in our sessions. And for that reason, some of that agenda item, was cut. I think there were little 20-second blips. And so just for people to know that the recordings that will be shared online will be in their entirety without those little 20-second blips throughout. And so apologize for that oversight and technical complication, but you will be able to see that in its entirety online. And so the next item for us would be approval of minutes. Again, similar to this afternoon, we have two sets of minutes to approve. We have the January 11th minutes first.
Move approval.
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Knudsen and a second by Councilmember Vargas. Any corrections or comments? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. And then the second set of minutes is from our last meeting on January 25th.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Knudsen. Any corrections or changes or comments? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously, 7-0. And next we have old and new business. Councilmember Huffman.
Thank you, Councilmember Stone. So today, I believe I heard during our nice long discussion during Committee of the Whole that from many fellow council members, there seems to be a desire that some of us at least would like to entertain the idea of alternatives to a forced removal of Camp 210 at Jerry Field. And I say very, very broad alternatives, entertaining of alternatives. And so we were presented with some suggestions for an emergency ordinance. And I wanted to present those very, very rough drafts of ordinances into public record and ask for review by feedback and ask for review and feedback by staff. It's already feeling pretty late. So I wanted to bring that up here in old and new. I don't know if that needs any kind of formal discussion by the council or if I just need to let you know that that's what I would like to do. So I will accept your direction for those who have done this before.
Councilmember Lillquist.
First of all, thank you to Councilmember Huffman for bringing this forward. I briefly looked over, there's two proposals. One's a short and simple solution to basically just suspend enforcement. The other is more complex and gets into parts of our code. I think it would be not I can't imagine passing that unreviewed ordinance makes any sense, as much as I appreciate where it's going. And then let me tell you where I appreciate where it's going. I talked to the mayor both before the camp clearing and since then, that I think that we need to buy ourselves time for the solutions to take effect. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been fielding a lot of calls and making them with some of you, with the mayor, with people over in the county, trying to put together some solutions to increasing shelter capacity for this, especially for this near-term winter event. But you know, I've been to countless meetings in the last few weeks doing exactly what a lot of the commentators were saying, that we need long-term solutions, and that's not shelter, that's housing, that's housing, that's housing, and that's the services we need. That was the discussion this morning. That was the discussion on Friday. That's been my discussion with most of you. But right now, I think we need to buy ourselves a little time, and the mayor is required to enforce the laws that we have enacted. And we've given some flexibility for that it was never there before, for emergency weather shelters, for homeless encampments, but he is still required to enforce the laws as they currently are written. I would like for us to be able to kind of take our part of ownership in this. I wish the ordinance was something that was vetted and that I understood, but it's not. I can already tell there's things in there that I might want to change. And so if anything, I'd like to focus more on the intent of that shorter version, which is just simply the idea that in this moment, in this time of COVID, in this time of impending cold weather, maybe now's the time that we give the administration flexibility in how it enforces the laws that we've adopted. And I think those laws are generally correct, right? In almost all circumstances, as written, the rules do the right thing. They strike the right balance. But at this moment, I don't know. So I'm wondering if any of the rest of you would like to talk about just the idea of buying ourselves a pause. I know people want us to pass this emergency ordinance, but that's not the way things work. That thing has not been reviewed. It was written by, in part by someone I know and I respect. But I just don't work that way. I just don't pass something I don't understand. Those are my comments.
So if I can interrupt for just 1 second. So this is something that was not in the packet, and I don't know that all council members have reviewed it at this point either. I don't know if you or Holly have something to share to share screen to.
It was emailed to us late.
Right, but I'm saying at this moment, the public and some fellow council members don't have that to look at. So I was just wondering if there was anything that could be shared on screen, and in the interim, I'll go to Councilmember Knudsen.
I just want to ask a question. I apologize this afternoon. I've got a pinched nerve in my neck, and I was laid up this afternoon, and I'm on muscle relaxers now, so everything's happy, so don't worry about it. But I want to ask Holly and Michael, because we've done this before. I mean, we did it for the back of City Hall when we allowed Homes Now to have the tent encampment for 3 or 4 months, but it was not a no barrier shelter. Is there anything in this that says it's a no barrier shelter that you have in front of you?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
And so I think, that's part of what we really need to be able to thoroughly review this.
Because, I'm open to a lot of things, but as I said this afternoon, no barrier shelters are, it's a non-starter with me. But anyway, if there's something worth looking at, I'll look at it.
Councilmember Vargas and then Anderson.
Yeah, since we only had an hour break today between committee and city council, which I took to eat and change and take care of everybody else, I haven't even reviewed this, and it seems a little unfair to be asking us to pass something that came to us today while we're in council. I mean, it just, I think this is not government. So, and it is not prudent. So I think that we should have an opportunity to read it and discuss it before we're talking about something I have no knowledge of besides the text that people are sending me. That is not how government works. That is not how I will be passing policy. I like to look at things, review them, analyze them, and ask questions. And that's what I'm going to do before I'm going to say yay or nay on any policy whatsoever.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I also agree with Pinky. I saw the email, I flagged it. I have not had a chance to read it. I have probably 200 emails to try to start getting through and about 40 that are flagged to try to respond back to people. So it just was not something I had a chance to review. But if it's something that we're going to be looking at, I would want to involve city staff. I'd want to involve legal to be able to just vet and look at it and help shape it. But I think our conversation that we had, one of the reasons why we went about an hour and a half over schedule was because we were having a dynamic conversation about where do we go next and what are our next steps. And so I would like to try to continue that conversation because we just really ran out of time when we just haven't had an opportunity to just get into what are we going to do next? Is Jerry Field appropriate? Is another site appropriate? When will we might have these new partnerships coming online? Can they maybe get ramped up a little bit faster? There's a lot of questions that I have. I don't, and I hope that there won't be an immediate camp cleanup because we all expressed that there's a lot of open questions and concerns that we all shared. So I do encourage the public to go and watch that video and see the dialogue that came up. But I'm personally more interested in, do we have a special session that we can really work through this? Can we set up a meeting soon so that we're not waiting 2 more weeks to maybe overflow another hour past time on, a committee meeting? That's kind of where I want to get at. I don't want to wait 2 weeks. And I understand council members Huffman wanting to move something forward because of the concern at Jerry Field. But I'm just not convinced that's the answer because it's not necessarily providing a move forward solution. We heard a lot about the concern about who is there and being able to get our service providers in there to be able to document who is in camp, reestablish those connections that may have been disconnected because of the protest. But how do we, I don't want to think necessarily like dealing with the protest, that's a separate issue, but much like what Councilmember Lillquist had mentioned earlier, what solutions are we going to try to provide to the people who are houseless there? And I'm more concerned on targeting that and trying to get those services reestablished for those individuals.
Councilmember Hamel.
I received I think the same email that everyone else did. I think it was later this afternoon and was able to just barely take a look at it. I looked through the ordinance proposal in between the short time that we had between the executive session and this evening's council session. And so I have a number of questions based on, I think, just the concept of the long proposal. And Councilmember Lillquist, I have not seen a short proposal. I don't know what that refers to. I will send the questions that I have to the city attorney. I guess I can CC the council members in on this. My questions are basically related to operator service provision timeline and what that timeline creates for opportunities. What guarantees around people who are in recovery and if they can maintain that type of, or maintain treatment rather, camp size, and then an agreement. So those are the rough questions. And I'll make sure that council and the city attorney and mayor's office has those.
Councilmember Huffman.
I'll just add a little bit more clarification. So I think I agree with everybody. I think that city council, what I've learned is that city council works very, very slow through a very deliberate process. We meet every 2 weeks, and we don't talk to each other. So I think during this process, trying to figure out what we can do as council members to help in this situation, which is it's a very quickly moving and changing situation, and we're not built for that. But if we can do something that says, hey, hold on just a second, can we do a little bit more of putting our heads together to figure this out, to try to be part of the solution? I think that's what I'm trying to propose here. I have talked to a lot of people over the last 2 weeks. I used to hate talking on the phone because I worked in a call center for so long. It's all I do now. And there is, right now, the gears are turning. People are thinking of ideas. They're thinking of solutions, and people who I trust and who have some good ideas and can be part of the solution, because it's going to take a lot of people to figure something out and take a path that hasn't been taken before, possibly. So I just want to if we as a council can give this situation an opportunity just to take a breath and work together, and cooperate and communicate and explore alternatives for the short term. I would like to do that. So these draft ordinances came very short, with very short notice, and but we won't meet for another 2 weeks. So at least wanted to present the idea that they are here. They definitely need to be reviewed, and there are probably a lot of questions that we will have. So yeah, hopefully that helps a little.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Greta, what I want to try to do is kind of save what I'm reading as Councilmember Hussman's intent, at least my intent, right? That we buy ourselves time for solutions. And some of those solutions the city can help with. A lot of those solutions involve actions by the county and the county health department. Both jurisdictions are looking into a recent presidential order, which allowed FEMA money to be used for help for homeless people in non-congregant settings. I mean, there's a number of wheels that are spinning and that might come online. And frankly, the Cornwall site is still available. I hope the city's offer is still good. You want to set up something down there with some nice safety rules? One of the best things I heard tonight was Eric. I talked with him last Thursday, and he called in again today, and he says that he's helping institute a zero tolerance policy for violence. He's very interested in the safety and the needs of the people at Jerry Field. That is an illegal, unpermitted encampment. Okay, that's a problem. But working on people's safety, that's a good thing. And I want to buy us time so we can let the good come through and not trip over ourselves. I think we can pull this together. And I don't just mean we, the city, especially not we, the council. We meet every 2 weeks. We're not going to do anything for 2 weeks, folks. It is illegal for us to do anything from now until then. You got to understand that. We can't do anything except talk, encourage, build bridges, convene, spread ideas, empower our administration, who does work on a daily basis, and the county, which does work on a daily basis, to work on some of these winter shelters. So what I want is to give ourselves and the community time for solutions. That's what I would like. And in the meanwhile, let's hope everyone stays safe and everyone stays warm.
So quick point of clarification. I mean, certainly we can call a special meeting or an emergency meeting. We're not restricted to meeting every 2 weeks if there's something that needs to be addressed before then. Other comments or questions from council members? I mean, I agree. I think I expressed this afternoon that, questions about, well, what's next and what happens? Where do we go from here? But I also am watching the weather reports, and I don't know that a tent, I mean, I don't see this as a solution. And so but I also appreciate the the trauma and anxiety that surrounds an unknown, right? A looming threat of a cleanup effort from the city, and the impact that that certainly has on individuals. But I guess the struggle is without, something concrete to review and discuss. That's the question, is where to go. So we could certainly schedule a meeting. We're not required to wait 2 weeks. I mean, if this is something that the council would like to find a time for us to reconvene, we can do that. Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, procedurally, I think it might be a good idea. I'll let Councilmember Huffman do it, to at least make a motion to have the administration review these draft ordinances and provide feedback on their implementation and their effects. I mean, we could at least put those into the hands of our experts, run them by other providers. I don't know. It seems like that is a first step. Let's at least have other people look at this, because we haven't even looked at it yet, but let's start looking at it. So I guess I would suggest procedurally that might be the first step.
Can I just make that motion? I move that we submit these draft ordinances into the public record and have administration review them for feedback.
Second.
Ooh, that was close. Motion made by Councilmember Huffman, second by Councilmember Hamel. Further discussion?
Having not seen it, I'm just going to abstain, because we're voting on something that we haven't even looked at, folks, and to have staff spend time on something that I might totally disagree with, so I'll just abstain.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'm also going to abstain, and it's not a reflection that the documents might not have merit, but having not read it, I just would struggle voting for something that I don't know yet if I support the content of the proposals. As far as I could understand the direction of it, but I really prefer to read a document and feel informed before I vote for something as a yes or a no.
Councilmember Vargas.
I too am going to abstain, not because it might not have merit, but I haven't read it. So I can't vote on something I haven't read.
Further comments? I mean, my question, I guess, in response to the motion and the comments from fellow council members is it most appropriate for us to have this proposal that we haven't seen yet reviewed and critiqued by staff, or is it more prudent for us to be articulating what we're seeking as policy and requesting staff assistance to develop something that meets that need? I haven't been engaged in this process, so I don't know if the hope is, if this is something that council members Huffman and Lillquist have been working on and are bringing forward in good faith, that this is the direction that you're hoping the council will go, or if this is something that's being brought to us completely from sort of outside forces. Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, I would say, in answer to your question, both. I would like the administration to look at it. The short version just simply says hiatus on enforcement. The long version adds a whole bunch of ways to create an unpermitted encampment, which is really complicated. I haven't been working on this. I saw it for the first time today as well. I was told that something would be coming forward, but I wasn't involved in that effort. So I'm learning on the fly as well. When I say both, I say what my intent is. My intent is to buy us time and create a regulatory flexibility so the administration's hands aren't tied. Because right now, I mean, this is what part of the comments that the mayor made on Friday in the Homeless Strategies Work Group. If we don't like the laws, then we, the council, needs to change them, because Seth can't change the laws, right? So if there needs to be flexibility in the laws he's required to enforce, put that in our lap. So that's what when I keep saying I'm willing to consider flexibility. I'm willing to consider special circumstances. I can't just remove all rules. That's not safe either. So my intent is to buy us time, create some flexibility where it may be needed. If this ordinance doesn't do that, okay, maybe there's another way also. So my intent is that, and this is maybe a means to get there. I'm not convinced it's the right way to get there either. So that's my intent, and I think Holly might have similar intent. And that would help the administration to what yardstick to weigh this proposal up against.
And just as a point of clarification, this proposal is specifically with respect to the Jerry Field, that existing location and encampment?
No, it refers to the particular changes to the rules on camping in public properties like Jerry Field. But it would apply to a similar illegal encampment at City Hall.
Or throughout the city.
Right. Those are the complications that really need to be considered.
Well, there's a motion on the table and a second. Okay, any further discussion before we vote? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
3. Okay, so that is 403. Mayor Fleetwood.
So you're asking us by this motion just to have a thorough staff review of the proposed ordinance, correct? Okay, we shall do so.
Thank you, Mayor Fleetwood.
Can I just for a second?
Yeah, Councilmember Knudsen.
I'm going to say it anyway. I probably shouldn't, but you realize that probably a lot of people on the other end of this are the people that have called in, and I think we just passed something that is going to bring immediate relief tomorrow. You know, I know you've made your explanation and Holly brought it forward, Michael, but what I'm saying is, anyway, maybe I shouldn't have said it, but it's usually not the way it's worked, but I know times are changing and things are going to be different. So anyway, that's probably what we're going to face now. And if the staff come back and says this isn't going to work, then, you know, usually something's presented and then we take time to look at it. So, man, I know that's been brought up before, but I'll stop there.
Any other comments from council on this item? Okay. Yeah, no worry. Okay. So that is the close of business. I will follow up with the clerk regarding how many community members were still in the queue for public comment. We will return.
The last I looked was 23.
Okay.
Actually, IT is saying we've lost several.
Yep.
So I'll just go through the names I have.
And we'll see who's here. Okay. And yep, and so we'll turn cameras off, and then at the close, we will adjourn, and I will find my clock. Okay, we're ready for the next speaker.
Next speaker is Cassidy Thornton.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Cassidy.
All right. Hi, I'm Cassidy. I'm a community representative on the Community Development Advisory Board, but tonight I speak here as a Bellingham citizen. As I'm on CDAP, I understand the very small funding of housing and homelessness funding the city has. I also understand that you spent $75,000 on a militarized removal of a community outside your lawn who were just asking for shelter. Yeah, the city used $75,000 in militant power over actual housing solution. And instead, this exacerbated the problem, and you still have not provided any shelter with below freezing temperatures this week. I find it interesting that the mayor said that protesters were dangerous and offensive. From my perspective, what is dangerous and offensive is a militarized removal with snipers against your own citizens. It is your job, mayor and council members, to serve the community, but instead you deepen the trauma and feelings of unsafety of your own community members. Moving forward, I urge you all to stop the sweeps. They are illegal and violate the CDC guidelines, and to restore water to the new encampment to meet the very basic needs of your citizens who you're supposed to serve. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy. Next speaker, please.
Will Marks.
Hi. Great, my clock is moving. I am Will. I am a resident of the City of Bellingham. I have spent a little bit of time down at Camp 210, the first one, and I've just, dropped off some supplies down at the second one as well. And I was just zooming in to throw my support behind the emergency measure that you all have decided to hopefully review with the utmost haste at this point, so we might succeed at getting our houseless neighbors some shelter in these extremely cold times that are directly ahead of us, that are here now. I would like to continue in that vein and express my lack of satisfaction with the ability of the city to house these people ahead of the coldest weather of the season that was imminent. Winter happens every year. There's no reason that this should come as a surprise to you all. Just take some money and get these people housed. Marcus said there's plenty of shelters ready to be delivered. You might start by sending those right down to Jerry Field, put them in the middle of all the sporting fields. We don't need to use them for sporting activities right now. There is plenty of space if you treat this like an emergency. And I would contend that it is. And many of the other callers this evening also feel that this is an emergency. And I urge you to act urgently. Find a way, please. I yield my time.
Thank you, Will. Next speaker, please.
Jordan Carey.
Hello, my name is Jordan Carey. First of all, it was just astonishing to me to see how many police officers were not wearing masks. Either that or wearing masks incorrectly or wearing neck gaiters, which have been proven to be less effective than not wearing a mask at all. And to me, that's not enforcing public safety, that's threatening public safety. Additionally, the city spent almost $75,000 to remove Camp 210. If the City of Bellingham has enough money to house people experiencing homelessness, why is it instead using it to traumatize them? Also, Councilmember Jean, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name, but I really urge you to reconsider your opposition to no barrier shelters. Don't you believe that everyone deserves to be indoors during freezing temperatures and to be safe during a global pandemic, whether or not they're sober? So many people who I love have struggled with addiction, and it makes me honestly want to cry that you and others maybe feel this way, because we're all humans and we're all, you know, just trying our best and have factors that we can't control. And yeah, it's just ridiculous that I'm like a 20-year-old student and literally doing like an art fundraiser to try and help people in my community to get basic human needs met. And the city clearly has enough money. It's just proving time and time again that it's lacking the dedication to human rights it supposedly upholds. And yeah, I'm just like so embarrassed to be living in Bellingham because of this situation, honestly. And it's crazy how like a lot of college students and people who have so much less than you all do, city council members, are having to be the ones to look out for our community members, and to demonstrate our basic empathy and respect for human dignity and equality. And people at Camp 210 are already so vulnerable, especially with the pandemic and the freezing temperatures, and they deserve, like, at the bare minimum, respect and empathy, not being chased away or treated unfairly and having their stuff thrown away. You know, they barely have like any physical possessions, and to throw away the only items keeping them even like a tiny bit warm and a tiny bit protected is just pure evil. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Jordan. Next speaker, please.
Amanda S.
Hey there, my name's Amanda. I'm with Whatcom County DSA. Held in to the very end here.
Sorry, Amanda, can you just state your full name for the record, please?
Yeah, Amanda Stewart.
Thank you.
So 3 minutes is really hard to put all of the disappointed mom energy I have into this. And sometimes it feels really difficult because it doesn't feel like it might be worth it. It seems like so much of the things that people come to public comment with get quote unquote listened to or heard and then ignored. So like, I give you credit, Hannah. You mentioned that you could have a meeting in between the time that you guys don't meet to talk about what is clearly an emergency within our city, something that we could have had solutions for before you swept it away using money that we could have used to fix this. The demands have pretty much been the same since it started in November. And it's just really difficult to like try to engage with government to fix something when it just keeps getting turned into what it is now. And as Giordano said beautifully earlier, it's really funny how this is becoming a repeat of the defund the police movement. So we've got a huge section of the community pouring out, pulling together to make things happen and showing you what we would like. And we show up to these things like it's almost 10:30 and we're all still here talking about it on repeat. There's been not really any other public comment, and we're going to be heard again. And it's just such a bummer to see our tax dollars go towards that. And still, like other people have said, we're in this pickle where we need money. We have no resources. The police budget has it all, and yet they don't have the resources to teach their police to wear masks properly. I just don't get it. So yeah, I just really hope that we're listened to. I know that these emergency ordinances were put in to a point where you guys couldn't read them, but at least entertain them or treat them with the importance and urgency that they require. Like Marcus said, like the fact that somebody has to come onto a city council meeting and beg of you to not let people die in the streets is just something else. And to appreciate the police and the people that were outside helping clean up, it's just crazy to me when I just don't get it. It seems really tone deaf, and that's a really big bummer. College kids are out there doing stuff. Just, I would love for you guys to work together with the urgency that this requires. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Amanda. Next speaker, please.
Ben Clay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Ben.
My name is Ben Clay. I've lived here my entire life, and I have this prepared statement. On the City of Bellingham's website, they discuss their sweep of Camp 210, making a bold and reassuring claim. Safety for all people living unsheltered, volunteers, city employees, and members of the public remains our primary concern. Taking the city at their word, they seem like they're handling the situation admirably. As it turns out, however, these words amount to next to nothing. A fleeting attempt for Mayor Fleetwood to take our eyes off the real injustice, the sweeps themselves. Safety appears to be the least of the city's concerns. As they continue to violate CDC guidelines, waste taxpayer money, and offer next to no alternatives for the 90 to 120 members of Camp 210, the guidelines that the CDC has laid out for dealing with homeless encampments during the pandemic clearly advise against sweeping encampments. They say if individual housing options are not available, allow people who are living unsheltered or in encampments to remain where they are. That doesn't mean shelters nearing capacity like base camp, which seems to be the only alternative the city has offered. They mean actual housing. In addition, cities are advised to provide a number of sanitation services and support the camps to ensure their safety. They ask cities to ensure nearby restroom facilities have functional water taps and are stocked with hand hygiene materials. The city has also failed to properly maintain restrooms, even cutting off porta potty servicing at City Hall prior to their sweep. So how is the safety the city's primary concern if they continue to violate CDC guidelines? Elsewhere on their website, the city states, based on recent court rulings, legal requirements, and COVID restrictions, occupied camp and vehicle cleanups have been suspended for the time being. It seems the city can't even keep their story straight. How about instead of spending $75,000 on sweeping one homeless camp with heavily armed officers, the city dedicates the same money, time, and resources to providing housing and services to the homeless. After all, not only is it more humane to house the homeless when Bellingham is about to reach temperatures below freezing, but it is also cheaper. It's less expensive to house homeless than it is to continually shelter and police them. It's been done before federally. George W. Bush's Housing First program helps reduce chronic homelessness by around 30% from 2005 to 2007. The Housing First approach put emphasis on permanent housing for individuals before treatment for disability and addiction. Finally, Biden signed an executive order that would provide cities 100% reimbursement for housing the homeless in hotels through FEMA until September. So the real question is, why isn't the city doing anything to provide homeless people with a more permanent shelter? Instead of spending taxpayer money on removing the homeless from the public view and funneling them into shelters, the city should spend its resources more wisely by establishing housing and better programs to support the mentally ill and those suffering from addiction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Next speaker, please.
This one is listed as Defund Bellingham Police Department. Please state your full name for the record.
This is Rosa Pavlychikov. I would like to say that I'm addressing all of my animosity and vitriol to the city council, the mayor, and the county executive. It will be below freezing every day for the next 6 days in a row. I am disgusted, not as you as politicians, but as human beings, that you could be so heartless to people that are hurting because of your failures in policy. The one day of fascist action that you had could have bought a dozen shelters minimum. 1%, just 1% of the Bellingham police budget would buy approximately 75 shelters. The fact that the community must tell you this, and you haven't known this, and you aren't acting to an emergency, is an insult in the form of the tax dollars that pay your paychecks. I would like to continue. Furthermore, how dare you complain of obscene language? What is obscene is that the $50,000 to $150,000 would have bought dozens of shelters. The fact that it was 30 degrees the night of the sweep with snow and freezing rain and wind chill that brought it down below the 28-degree threshold in which there should have been emergency winter sheltering. The city of Bellingham has violated its own laws to defend fascist action against the homeless. Obscene and vulgar is the city of Bellingham's treatment of the houseless population. It is obscene and vulgar spending $1,000, destroying people's homes and stealing their things. You incompetent jackasses.
Thank you, Rosa. Next speaker, please.
Virginia Herrick. Virginia Herrick.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Virginia, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name's Virginia Herrick. I'm a 30-year resident of Bellingham. Thank you for your ongoing concern for and work on the problem of informal encampments of homeless people. Such encampments with no services and only private volunteers, infusions of supplies and food, but no bathrooms, clean water, power, or security create problems. Yet setting people adrift, as has been mentioned multiple times, not only is not advised by the CDC during a pandemic, but also is traumatic for an already stressed and vulnerable group. Camp 210 is not the only place that people are living rough in Bellingham. Others also need services mentioned already this evening, such as water and bathrooms. People who are camping should not be required to move unless there's some place for them to move that meets their needs. Sweeps without appropriate selection of alternatives don't protect anyone. So here are my suggestions. First, in addition to decriminalizing camping for the duration of the pandemic and making water and sanitation facilities available, it's urgent to immediately collaborate with local agencies and volunteers to set up multiple warming shelters. While alternative housing is being created or found, warming shelters should include several covered spaces with fire pits or other heat sources, benches or space for folding chairs socially distanced around the heat sources, free beverages, hot beverages, a staff person or people to supervise and if need be, eject people whose behavior is violent, and a kiosk where homeless individuals can leave messages for a case manager or social worker. One warming shelter could be near Camp 210 or some other downtown location. There should also be warming shelters on the north and south sides of Bellingham at a minimum. Second, please fund emergency operation of a nighttime outreach van with 3 workers to seek out homeless individuals in distress between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Also, third, as soon as possible, please establish as many tiny home villages as can be filled and administered by responsible agencies. This should not wait until spring. I particularly urge you to award the next available tiny home structures, space, and utility to homes now because they're ready right now to create Swift Haven 2. They have a track record of local success and have earned the trust of housed neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginia. Next speaker, please.
Emma Goldman.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Emma, go ahead.
My name is Emma Goldman, and I have been a resident of Bellingham for the past several years. I want to echo the comments that my loved ones made tonight and speak with you about Camp 210 and the housing crisis. To respond to some of the earlier comments, of course, Camp 210 is not safe. People's lives are being threatened every single day by houselessness in the midst of a pandemic in the winter. But I can tell you that as a volunteer, I have never been made unsafe by any of the campers. They're my neighbors, and they have shared care and compassion with me through months of trauma. The threat of public health and safety comes from our government's decision to deprive our neighbors of shelter, not from people having to see our unsheltered neighbors. We did not want to be on the lawn in the first place. We want housing to be available to everyone. There is simply no viable option. We can't keep them warm at camp, and people are literally choosing to go to jail so they don't have to go to base camp. Seth, you claimed that the militarized sweep was necessary to protect the safety of campers, yet you evicted our neighbors and refused to offer anywhere else for people to go. You claimed that you're steadfast in your commitment to building capacity, and if I have to hear that one more time, and you're actively engaged in this effort, and I want to make clear to you tonight that your incompetence and your refusal to take meaningful action to protect the health and well-being of our neighbors will literally cost lives, and we will never forgive you. Camp 210 formed in response to institutional failures. If you had adequate solutions to this crisis, we would have never been there. But you have consistently refused to serve our community's most vulnerable. You've denied our neighbors access to basic services, and you've denied them of their humanity. Rather than investing in criminalization of houselessness and militarized sweeps, I urge you to invest in housing. We refuse to accept your continued rejection of responsibility. Offering housing for $25,000 or $50,000 for professional services was and continues to be an absolutely pathetic proposal presented in the face of the scale of this crisis. We took your offer to camp, and as a community, we decided that we would not leave anyone behind. Our community has only grown stronger since. And displacement is traumatizing. And what you might not have realized is that we grew stronger through this process. We did not get to stay in the same place, but we did stay together. Camp 210 is a community forged in crisis. Camp 210 is sustained through mutual aid, and we will continue to do this ourselves. We will not leave anyone behind. We will not allow our neighbors to die as a result of your immoral apathy. You have the opportunity to take meaningful action immediately. I urge you to use all of your political capital to drop all of the charges, deliver amnesty to those who protected our unsheltered neighbors as best we could. You all are talking about buying yourselves some time to be able to breathe, but criminalize those of us who did the same in the face of displacement. Venmo is at camp_210. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Next speaker, please.
Lacey Thompson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lacey. Go ahead.
Hi, Councilmember. I would like to thank you for your time in advance. Having listened to everything that everybody has had to say, the woman by the name of Amanda who spoke recently took the words out of my mouth. As a young mother in this town, I never thought I never thought that I would experience or witness what I saw with the police department. So I'm not going to rehash every detail that all but one community member has stated, because I'm in complete agreement, except for that one individual who said that we should make this the responsibility of the federal government. Yeah, we could wait that long, but why should we? Why don't we be bold? Why don't we do something that needs to be done? Because clearly it's not working. We can't move people from place to place because the unsightliness and the discomfort that these people cause is not going to go away just by moving into somebody else's neighborhood. If we put those people in permanent houses, nobody ever has to see them again. And not only that, but they can get back on their feet. I haven't heard anybody mention it, but there is a city in Alberta. Actually, the 7 largest cities in Alberta have instituted the plan, but there's a place called Medicine Hat, and they have eliminated homelessness because they did guaranteed housing for all. And as dirty as it seems, sometimes people just need to hear it in raw numbers. And one study in America found that it can cost each individual every year as much as $25,000 less to provide them with a permanent home than to put them into the shelter model, which is clearly not working. So while no barrier housing is really uncomfortable for some people who have a lot of moral conflicts with these individuals, it doesn't matter, because these people are still going to be homeless. If you deny them the help that they need, they're not going to stop those behaviors. The first thing we need to do is to give them a warm place to sleep. And when you guys wrap this meeting up and go to bed at night, I hope you understand that by delaying any action, people will die. And I hope you can sleep comfortably knowing that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lacey. And not in comment directly to the last speaker, to Lacey, but just a reminder to the audience and speakers that comments should be directed to the council as a whole and not single out any individual. So thank you for that. Next speaker, please, Elizabeth.
Sage Jones.
Hi, my name is Sage Jones. I'm a member of Whatcom DSA, and I'm also speaking as a previously unhoused person. So number one, stop the sweeps. It's embarrassing that your excuse that the sleep legislation is just crossing your desk when you as lawmakers should have written these ordinances 2 weeks ago when there were snipers on the roof, or better yet, 3 months ago when the first tents went up at City Hall. You knew this problem was coming. It's your job to solve it. And it's embarrassing that citizens had to write ordinances for you because you didn't write them yourselves. Call an emergency session. Austin has bought a hotel. San Francisco has been reimbursed for all of the hotel rooms they've bought for homeless individuals. You have no excuses. There's CARE Acts. I understand that you're part-time employees, but we're volunteers who have put so much time and energy into handing you the solutions that you conveniently ignore. I don't understand how anyone who understands the legacy of mission work in the US can dismiss the concerns about inclusivity brought up about Lighthouse Mission. Stop using base camp as an excuse not to provide safe and welcoming shelter for anyone in our community. The council as a whole, would you be allowed into the Lighthouse Mission on your muscle relaxers? Given that Lighthouse doesn't meet the needs of our community, it seems like the only outcome of the sweeps is to repeatedly traumatize houseless individuals in an effort to placate the complaints of business owners who obviously have your ear. And number two, related to the comments you've made related to the sweep that did happen, Antifa is not an organization, you know that. Antifa means anti-fascist, and if you're anti-fascist, you need to simplify your equation. If you're not, find a new scapegoat. And last but not least, I just want to stress that the reason you're dealing with our peasant problems is because a billionaire class prevents everyone in our community from living a dignified life. We're all one really bad day away from being houseless. You're complicit in perpetuating this system. Washington's tax system is one of the most regressive in the country. Amazon's combined state and local income tax last year was 2.9%, while the average working class Washingtonian paid 17.8% in taxes. Get your friends on state legislature to fix this. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Sage. Next speaker, please.
Kathleen Cross.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Kathleen, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Cross, and I, of course, wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the police interaction with the homeless people was terrible, but that's been said a lot. I would like to focus on two things. One, that it sounds like the bathroom, the water to the bathrooms near the new campment was turned off. It seems like it was working, and then the camp came and they turned it off. And that also is in violation with CDC guidelines, because the CDC guidelines specifically say that if there's an encampment, you should work on sanitation, and then that's the most important thing. So it seems like the city is continuing to violate CDC guidelines. And at the beginning of this meeting, everyone was so deferential to the public health person there, and seemed to really value expertise in public health. And so I encourage you all to, I think immediately somebody needs to turn on the water there post haste. And the second thing is I really want to address why are we letting the police walk around without masks on? I think there's a big elephant in the room in that the police do not police themselves when it comes to wearing masks. And it seems so hypocritical that they would violently send snipers to attack these homeless people because it is a health and safety risk, when people who are homeless are more likely to wear masks than the police. And that is it's such a flagrant disregard, especially when the police are supposed to be these beacons of safety, and they're supposed to be the good citizen that people can look up to, that little children can look up to and be like, I want to be a police officer someday. And yet they're openly not wearing masks and disregarding masks. And I would like an inquiry into the culture of the police department in Bellingham, and that needs to change immediately. I think it's just a slap in the face when they say, oh, we care about health and safety, and that's why we're doing this. And then meanwhile, they are like laughing in our faces by not wearing masks. And yeah, so those are the two things that I would like to highlight. But yes, and I also think that for every dollar they spend sweeping encampments, they should spend that on hotel vouchers. And that's one thing I would recommend. The police shouldn't be able to do this willy-nilly. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next speaker, please.
Jacob Peterson.
I don't see them on the call, Ms. Oaks.
I see Jacob on the call. Can you hear me?
Should we go to the next speaker, Ms. Oaks?
Sure. Hannah Fishman.
Next speaker, please, Ms. Oaks.
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, that will be the end of public comment. Assuming there are no further comments or business before the council. Anyone have anything? Councilmember Vargas.
I just wanted to remind everyone that something that came out of our meeting today is there are 88 beds available at base camp. I know some people don't want to go there, but I'm just saying in this upcoming cold, we have 88 beds available to house people immediately. And I encourage people to take advantage of that.
Any further comments by council? Anything further this evening? Councilmember Lillquist.
I don't know if there's anybody here who can answer this. The only staff member maybe might be Mr. Rick Sepler, but I mean, I do believe that the county has been looking for some more winter shelter ideas. The only one I know, that because I turfed it over there, had to do with the FEMA grants for the non-congregant sheltering. Winter sheltering really has been the responsibility of the Whatcom County Health Department. And that's a lot of what people are talking about is emergency severe weather shelters. I don't know if anybody knows what's going on over there. I've been lobbing emails across and reaching out to council members, but truthfully, I do not know at the staff level what the county is thinking or doing. I do not know whether the county is making, trying to access funds that are available from the state level on emergency winter sheltering. I think many of those are available to the county and not to the city. I really don't know. I'm not a housing expert. Mr. Stepler, I'm very sorry. Do you have any?
You've stated it fairly clearly. It is county that's the assigned responsibility. As you're aware, they were having challenges in finding operators to be able to staff those shelters. I will reach out to them first thing tomorrow, and I'll pass on to council by email current status and where they are.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Stepler. So we will be following up with the county, obviously, for the state of winter emergency shelter in light of upcoming weather. And in addition, following up with staff regarding the proposal from Councilmember Huthman this evening. And then, as I've said before, as needed, we can schedule a meeting in the interim if there's something that comes forward that we need to discuss before the next meeting. And otherwise, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 22nd. So yeah, more to come. But in the interim, everybody stay safe and thank you for your continued work. Have a good night. Meeting adjourned.